Hello everyone, welcome to a journey that will captivate your attention every second. Imagine a scene that is both tragic and mysterious. A legendary king who once made the world tremble. The one who defeated Goliath with a fateful stone throw, who turned Israel from a broken tribe into an invincible kingdom, now lies still like a fading shadow. His body is cold, and his once sword-wielding hands now tremble, weak and lifeless. The thickest blankets, woven from the precious wool of Canaan, are piled upon him, but the cold still rages through every bone. The palace is in chaos, the attendants whisper in the dark, and then, like a lightning strike in the storm, a mad decision is made. Find a young, beautiful girl, as radiant as the rising sun, to lie by his side, using the warmth of youth to keep the last breath of life in the dying king. Her name is Abishag, a name veiled by time, but her story is a whirlwind of mystery that could overturn everything you thought you knew about King David. Who is Abishag in the bloody drama of Israel's royal court? A mere servant who unwittingly stepped into history, or a key pawn in the deadly game of power? Is she really just a warm companion for David, or is there a bigger secret behind those clear eyes, waiting to explode? And why, when David closes his eyes forever, does Abishag's name ignite the flames of ambition and rivalry? If you want to uncover the truth, a story buried in the pages of the Bible that few have noticed, then this is where you need to stay. Don't just watch, live the story with me. Like this video now, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to never miss a moment. I need you to join me. Right now, leave a comment. Do you think Abishag is a victim or the one who changed history? Don't hesitate, because we're about to embark on a dramatic journey where everything you know about David may be turned upside down. To understand Abishag, we must begin with King David, the central figure in this story. Let's rewind time to David's early days before he became king, before he was mentioned in the timeless Psalms. David was not the kind of person you'd expect to become a great leader. He was born in a shepherd's family in Bethlehem, a small, dusty town where the scent of dry grass and the bleating of sheep were the daily sounds. As the youngest of 8 brothers, David was often overlooked. His brothers, tall, strong men, likely mocked him when they saw the youngest, scrawny with sun-bleached hair, holding a harp instead of a sword. But God saw what others could not. Imagine an early morning, when the fog still blankets the fields of Bethlehem. David, still a young man, is sitting among the sheep, his fingers gliding across the harp's strings, creating gentle melodies like the breeze. Suddenly, a lion appears from the bushes, baring its teeth and growling, charging at the flock. Without hesitation, David rises, gripping his staff, and with all his strength, he confronts the beast. The Bible tells that he killed both the lion and the bear to protect the sheep, the first sign of the courage and faith that would define his future. But the moment that truly changed David's life happened on the battlefield. A valley filled with dust and the cries of Philistine soldiers echoing across the hills. On the other side stands Goliath, a giant warrior nearly 3 meters tall, with a massive body like a bronze statue, armor gleaming in the sun, and a spear so sharp it could pierce stone. The Israelites are terrified. Even King Saul, Israel's first king, dares not step forward. Goliath roars in mockery, "Choose one to face me, or all of you will become slaves." No one dares move. Then David appears. The shepherd boy, sent by his father to the battlefield merely to bring food to his brothers, steps forward with his face flushed in anger at the blasphemy against God. He doesn't wear armor. The heavy armor Saul offered him because it's too cumbersome for his small frame. Instead, David takes a simple slingshot and 5 smooth stones from a nearby stream. The crowd falls silent. Goliath laughs loudly, mocking, "Do you think I am a dog, that you come at me with a stick and stones?" But David replies firmly, "I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, whom you have defied." One shot. The sound of the wind whistling through the air. The stone flies straight into Goliath's forehead. A loud crash echoes as the giant falls, face down to the ground. The crowd erupts in cheers. From that moment on, David was no longer an unknown boy. He became the hope of Israel, a hero chosen by God. David's journey from then on was a series of challenges and victories. He became a musician in Saul's court, using his music to soothe the troubled soul of the king. But Saul soon grew jealous of David's fame, especially when the people sang, "Saul has slain thousands and David tens of thousands." David was pursued and had to hide in caves, living as an exile. Yet through it all, he never lost his faith. Eventually, after Saul's death, David was anointed king, first in Hebron and later uniting all of Israel. Under David's reign, Israel became a mighty kingdom. He made Jerusalem the capital, known as the City of David, and brought the Ark of the Covenant there, affirming the sacred covenant between God and his people. He defeated enemies from the Philistines to the Ammonites, expanding the borders and bringing peace and prosperity. But David was not just a warrior, he was a poet, a worshipper. The Psalms he wrote, such as Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd," still resonate through the ages, comforting and inspiring millions. However, David was not perfect. His life was a colorful canvas where the light of faith mingled with the darkness of sin. One of his greatest stains was his relationship with Bathsheba, a mistake that led to a series of tragedies in his family. We will return to that story later, as it is closely linked to what happens with Abishag. But for now, remember this. David was a complex man, a king, a warrior, a poet, and a person with very ordinary weaknesses. If you want me to make a detailed video about David's journey, from his days fleeing in caves, his glorious victories, to his fateful mistakes, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to dive deeper. But today, we will focus on the final chapter of David's life, where he was at his weakest, and where Abishag, the mysterious young woman, enters the story. As David entered his later years, he was no longer the fierce warrior he once was. The Bible, in 1 Kings 1:1-4, vividly describes, "King David was old and advanced in age, and though they covered him with blankets, he could not get warm." Take a moment to imagine this scene. An elderly man with gray hair, his eyes fading with time, lying on the intricately carved wooden bed in the palace of Jerusalem. Around him, the cold stone walls and lavish tapestries were useless in warding off the chill that had seeped into his body. The man who once led armies through the desert, who danced before the Ark of the Covenant with all his vigor, now could not even keep himself warm. Scholars suggest he might have suffered from circulatory issues, or perhaps an age-related ailment like arthritis or muscle loss. But whatever the medical reason, this was not just a physical issue. It symbolized the closing of a reign. David's court officials, those who had followed him through countless battles, could not bear to witness this sight. They whispered to each other in the dark halls of the palace, "What can we do to help the king?" And then, a strange idea was proposed, an idea that might raise eyebrows today. They said, "Let us find a young woman, a virgin, to care for the king and keep him warm." This was not a common practice, but in that time, It was believed that the vitality of youth could be transferred to the elderly. Hay searched throughout Israel, from the small villages by the Jordan River to the towns on the Judean hills, to find the right one. Finally, their eyes fell upon Abishag, a girl from Shunem, a peaceful region in the northern part of Israel, within the territory of the Issachar tribe. Shunem was not a famous place. It was simply a small town where people lived by farming, growing wheat and olives, and where mornings were greeted by the crowing of roosters and the laughter of children running across fields. Abishag likely grew up in this simplicity, a girl with rough hands from household chores, long hair shining under the sun, and clear eyes reflecting the purity of youth. The Bible describes her as very beautiful and young. But Abishag was not just a pretty face. She embodied freshness, life, qualities that the aging court of David longed for. Imagine this scene. On a typical day in Shunem, Abishag is drawing water from the well or picking olives under a tree when suddenly a group of strangers appears. They wore magnificent robes, rode on horseback, and carried the king's decree. "This girl," they announced, "will go to Jerusalem. She will serve King David." Her family might have been stunned, both proud and anxious. With all her innocence, Abishag stepped onto the chariot, leaving behind her beloved village for a place beyond her imagination. When she arrived at the palace, all eyes were on her. Imagine Abishag walking through the towering wooden doors, her simple dress billowing in the wind, her bare feet touching the cold stone floor. She was led into David's chamber, a frail old man with silver hair, weak breaths, and trembling hands resting on thick blankets. Her task was clear: to lie beside him and warm him with her body heat. But this was no romantic tale, nor anything improper, as some might assume. The Bible is explicit in 1 Kings 1:4. The king did not have relations with her. Their relationship was purely one of care, based on respect and dignity. Though weak, David was still David, the man who had lived his life with integrity before God. He did not see Abishag as an object to exploit. Instead, he honored her as a devoted servant, someone who brought him comfort in his final days. Perhaps, on those cold nights, as she lay beside him, he whispered to her about his battles with the Philistines, the psalms he wrote in the caves, or the covenant God had made with him. Abishag listened, without judgment, without expectation, just present, like a small flame warming the room. But Abishag's presence was more than just providing warmth. She became a breath of fresh air in the royal court. A simple village girl, without title or ambition, now stood beside Israel's greatest king. This raised many questions. Did she play a larger role? Was her arrival a sign of the changes to come? Imagine the curious glances from courtiers, the whispers behind her back. Who is this girl, so close to the king? Abishag never sought attention, yet she unintentionally became a symbol, a sign that David's era was ending and a new chapter of power struggles was beginning. If you're enjoying this story, hit the like button and share it with your friends. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you think Abishag felt about being taken to the palace? Was she afraid, or did she feel honored? Leave a comment. Your engagement motivates me to keep telling stories like this. Abishag entered David's life like a gentle breeze, bringing warmth and comfort in his final days. Yet, even her tender presence couldn't stop the relentless march of time. David's health declined further. Long, cold nights stretched on, and the light in his eyes slowly faded. The palace, once vibrant with songs of victory and praises to God, now sat in heavy silence, as if everyone sensed an era was coming to an end. Then, the moment arrived. David, the great king of Israel, closed his eyes for the last time, leaving behind a mighty yet fractured kingdom. His death was more than just the passing of a man. It was the spark that ignited a silent yet ruthless battle for power, where Abishag unwillingly would find herself at the center of bloody ambitions. David's passing left a kingdom strong but divided. Before he died, he had named Solomon, his son with Bathsheba, as his successor. But not everyone accepted this. Adonijah, another of David's sons, had been quietly preparing to seize the throne. Picture Adonijah, a tall, handsome man with a charming smile and eyes full of ambition. He had grown up in the palace, spoiled from birth, believing the crown was rightfully his. The Bible describes him in 1 Kings 1:5. Adonijah exalted himself, saying, "I will be king." Adonijah did not act alone. He had powerful allies: Joab, the seasoned general of David's army, who had led troops through countless battles, and Abiathar, a high priest with great influence over Israel's spiritual life. They gathered at Enrogel for a grand feast where Adonijah proclaimed himself king. Imagine the smoke of roasted lamb rising into the air, wine overflowing, laughter echoing among the guests. Standing in the center, adorned in regal robes, Adonijah declared, "I am the new king of Israel." He believed his father was too weak to stop him, that no one could stand in his way. But David, though on his deathbed, remained alert enough to take action. He learned of Adonijah's conspiracy through Nathan, the loyal prophet who had previously confronted David over his sin with Bathsheba. Nathan rushed to the palace and knelt before David. "Your Majesty, Adonijah has declared himself king without your knowledge." Despite his weakness, David gave an immediate order: "Bring Solomon to me." He summoned Zadok, the high priest, and Benaiah, a loyal general. David said, "Let Solomon ride my mule. Take him to Gihon and anoint him as king of Israel." Imagine the scene. Solomon, a young man with bright eyes and a calm demeanor, riding David's mule through the crowded streets of Jerusalem. The people gathered, curiously watching him. At Gihon, a sacred spring, Zadok poured olive oil on Solomon's head, and the sound of trumpets mixed with the cheering of the crowd. "Long live King Solomon!" News spread to Enrogel, where Adonijah was celebrating. His guests panicked, scattering in all directions. Adonijah, pale-faced, ran to the altar in the tabernacle, gripping the horns of the altar in a desperate plea for protection. Solomon, showing his first act of mercy, forgave him, but with a warning: "Live in peace, or you won't escape." But the story didn't end there. After David's death, Adonijah conspired again. This time, Abishag became the center of his plan. Imagine this: Adonijah before Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, speaking in a falsely humble tone. "Mother, I ask only one thing. Please tell Solomon to give me Abishag as my wife." It sounds harmless, doesn't it? But in that culture, taking a woman who had been close to the king was a way to claim power. Abishag wasn't just any woman. She was a symbol of David's dynasty. If Adonijah took her, he could subtly announce to the people, "I am the rightful heir of David." Bathsheba, perhaps out of love for her family or unaware of the ulterior motives, took the request to Solomon. She knelt before her son. "My child, Adonijah only asks for Abishag. Please let him have her." But Solomon was no fool. He stood up, his eyes cold and his voice firm. "You ask for Abishag for Adonijah? Why not ask for the throne for him as well?" For Solomon, this wasn't about personal feelings. It was a direct challenge. He commanded Benaiah, "Execute Adonijah immediately." One swift strike, and Adonijah's ambitions were crushed forever. And what of Abishag? The Bible says nothing more about her after that. She disappears from history, like a fleeting breeze in the palace of Jerusalem. But her brief presence changed everything, from the transfer of power to the fate of those vying for the throne. Imagine Abishag standing there, in the dark corner of the palace, when news of Adonijah's death echoed through the halls. Did she feel afraid, or did she silently return to Shunem, back to her quiet life? We'll never know. But one thing is certain. Abishag, though unwittingly, became an indispensable part of this story. What do you think of Solomon's actions? Too harsh, or necessary to maintain the kingdom's stability? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like me to share more power struggles from Solomon's reign, let me know. Abishag wasn't the only woman in the Bible who played an important role despite not having power or fame. Let's go back even further to the story of Tamar in Genesis 38. Tamar was the daughter-in-law of Judah, one of the 12 sons of Jacob, the patriarch of Israel. She married Judah's eldest son but he died young without leaving any children. According to the custom of the time, Er's brother Onan was supposed to marry Tamar and provide offspring for his brother. But Onan refused, and he too died. Tamar was left in a hopeless situation, without a husband, without children, in a society where a woman's value was tied to her family. Judah promised that when his youngest son, Shelah, grew up, he would marry Tamar. But he feared Shelah might die too, so he kept him from her, leaving Tamar in vain anticipation. Imagine Tamar's feelings, abandoned, seen as an omen of misfortune, with no one to protect her. But Tamar didn't give up. She decided to take action. A bold, risky move. She disguised herself as a prostitute and sat by the road where Judah would pass. Unrecognizing her, Judah approached her, and Tamar became pregnant. When the truth came out, Judah intended to have her executed for adultery. But Tamar presented the proof, the ring and staff belonging to Judah, and said, "The man who made me pregnant is the father." Judah was stunned, realizing the injustice he had caused. He forgave Tamar and declared, "She is more righteous than I." Tamar gave birth to twins, Perez and Zerah, and Perez became the ancestor of David and ultimately the Messiah. Tamar's actions were not just about survival. They were about preserving God's promise to Abraham that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. Now let's turn to the Shunammite woman in 2 Kings 4. She lived in the same region as Abishag, Shunem, hundreds of years later. She was a wealthy and hospitable woman who recognized Elisha as a prophet of God. She told her husband, "Let's build a small room for him, so he has a place to rest when he passes by." Picture a small rooftop chamber with a simple wooden bed, a little table, and an oil lamp. Elisha was moved by her kindness and asked, "What can I do for you?" She insisted she needed nothing, but Elisha knew she longed for a child. The prophet declared, "By this time next year, you will hold a son in your arms." And it came to pass. However, tragedy struck when the boy died of an illness. The Shunammite woman did not weep. She laid her son on Elisha's bed and ran to find him. "Did I ask for a son?" she said firmly. "Do not deceive me." Elisha prayed, and a miracle happened. The boy was brought back to life. Like Tamar and Abishag, this woman had no power or status. Yet, she became a vessel for God's miracle, protecting her family and carrying on her faith. Abishag, Tamar, and the Shunammite woman were all ordinary women, yet their roles were irreplaceable. They remind us that in God's plan, no one is insignificant. What do you think of these women? Do they inspire you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Though Abishag's life in the Bible was brief, it leaves us with a profound message. She did not choose to be with David. She was summoned and served him with quiet devotion. Imagine Abishag in David's final nights, listening to his weakening breath, unaware that her presence would lead to great events, from Solomon's ascension to Adonijah's downfall. She did not seek glory, yet she was an essential part of God's story. What does this mean for us today? Perhaps you feel your life is small, insignificant. Perhaps you are waiting for a greater purpose, but only see repetitive days. Yet the stories of Abishag, Tamar, and the Shunammite woman remind us God overlooks no one. Even the smallest acts, an act of kindness, a moment of patience, can be a vital link in a greater plan. If this story resonates with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt like part of something bigger, even if you didn't realize it at first? I'd love to hear your story. And if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue sharing meaningful stories from the Bible. Thank you for listening. Peace be with you, and see you in the next video.